Thank you. The first substantive session of the Preparatory Committee for Durban II has now taken a number of steps on the organization of work that tell us a lot about where we are and where we are going, notwithstanding the obviously diametrically opposed positions of the African group as represented by the OIC and the EU. To review those steps, on participation, a Jewish NGO that was unambiguous in the support of the State of Israel, its very name being the Canadian Council for Israel and Jewish Advocacy, was prevented from participating in this first substantive session by a series of allegedly procedural moves. Consideration of their participation was delayed until the final hours of this session, by which time, of course, they had already been effectively excluded. As we all know, the objection came from Iran. In the Durban II context, there is no need for Iran to reiterate its substantive objections, which include its president's genocidal ambitions with respect to Israel, since procedure will suffice as an explanation in a UN milieu. By stark contrast, there was no objection to Durban II's accreditation today of the NGO Palestinian Grassroots Anti-Apartheid Wall Campaign. On objectives, the delegation of a number of Arab and Muslim states that have been rendered effectively Judenrein since the creation of Israel have suddenly professed a burning desire to take up the question of anti-Semitism at the Durban II conference. The reason becomes apparent when observing repeated assertions about the meaning of anti-Semitism. For example, and I quote, "Anti-Semitism targets Arabs who are also Semites and by extension the whole Muslim community." As proof of this unique idea, Algeria told the PrepCom, and I quote, "Resolution 1994/64 of the Human Rights Commission requests consideration of discrimination against blacks, anti-Semitism including discrimination against Arabs and Muslims, xenophobia, negrophobia, and related intolerance." But actually, the resolution requests examination, and I quote, "of any form of discrimination against blacks, Arabs and Muslims, xenophobia, negrophobia, anti-Semitism, and related intolerance." In fact, and I was present at the time, it was an OIC member that insisted anti-Arab and anti-Muslim be added before the word anti-Semitism, so as to create the appearance of a hierarchy. And every member of the OIC refused to vote for the paragraph that contained only a reference to anti-Semitism. But then those facts don't fit the Durban narrative. For the record, then, it becomes unfortunately necessary to repeat that anti-Semitism was coined to mean Jew hatred by a Jew hater. The objectives of Durban II, we have also heard, should include continued UN demonization of the State of Israel. The verbiage is familiar to all of us: foreign occupation, colonial occupation, and so on, under the guise of state racism. Such a goal is a direct throwback to the old canard that Zionism is racism, objectives for Durban II, which are more accurately described as anti-Semitism. So lastly, the articulation of objectives and plans for Durban II over the course of these last 2 weeks go far beyond the impact on Jews. To quote but a few, the exclusion of the controversial concept of sexual orientation is a concept which may weaken the global combat against racism. Ending the instrumentalization of democratic processes for racist ends, and so on. So I'll conclude, Madam Chairman, with this. As this preparation draws to a close, the real agenda here in evidence, notwithstanding attempts to deny transparency by moving all serious negotiations behind closed doors, ought to frighten the members of every democratic society. Thank you.
لقد تجاوزت الوقت المحدد لك وهناك نقطة نظام.
You've just exceeded the time allocated to you, and I see there's a point of order from South Africa.
Madam President, I had my flag up on a point of order for a while, but unfortunately I was not recognized while the speaker was on the floor. Madam, there is a requirement that this conference be called by the title for which it stands. It is a review conference. There has never been a reference to a Durban II, and I request that Madam President please insist that speakers who take the floor must call the conference by its proper title. This is a review conference. And every time that somebody makes the mistake of using a title other than that, there shall be a point of order, and we request that it please be recognized and such a speaker be called to order. Thank you very much.
شكرا أشكر السيد.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador from South Africa. Therefore, I can confirm the comment that's just been made. Which concerns the preparation of a review conference. It's the Durban conference. It's a Durban review conference. There are no names such as Durban II. And you can find this confirmed in all the documents circulated by the United Nations. They are proof. Some NGOs choose a name such as Durban II instead of calling it the Durban Review Conference. And therefore I'd ask you not to have recourse to such a name which does not exist. The Chair will emphasize and stress the comment just made by South Africa and supports what it contains. Representative of Algeria has the floor.
شكرا سيدتي وبعجالة فقط.
Thank you, Madam. I'll try and be brief. I would simply like to give my support to what's just been said by the distinguished ambassador for South Africa. Non-governmental organizations have to respect the rules of the game and the ethics and principles required by courtesy. The NGO that has just spoken, I would call on specifically to read and interpret strictu sensu what has been said, what was said by the ambassador from my country, and avoid any erroneous interpretation.
We came to Durban in 2001 to combat racism and found the terms of racial intolerance and discrimination hijacked for a campaign of anti-Semitic agitation. We came with a sense of collective responsibility to seek solidarity among all victims of racism and encountered a barrage of hatred and violence unheard of since the Holocaust. Our sister organizations in the anti-racist movement, with few courageous exceptions, were marked by their silence. We became the victims of identity theft as the very terms of Jewish victimology, Holocaust, and anti-Semitism were distorted and hijacked for political propaganda. Madam Chair, hate must be considered as indivisible. Yes.
السيد الموقر هناك نقطة نظام من.
There's a point of order, sir, from the Egyptian Arab Republic.
Before this organization spoke, another one had spoken a while back, and its statement was completely erroneous, out of context, out of order, outside the subject, outside the item we're discussing, and we were very patient because we did not want to interrupt anyone at the risk of saying that their freedom of expression has been limited. But honestly, Madam Chair, I think that it is high time that we reintroduce an element of respect and integrity to our discussions. The item under discussion right now is organization of work. If the speaker has anything to say on organization of work, he may speak. If he doesn't, Madam Chair, we need and must and should, from now on, preserve the integrity and the respect of the discussions in this PrepCon. I thank you.